Did you know that since 2019, between 0 and no more than 3 wide receivers have appeared in the top 10 finishers in PPR? Did you also know that last year there was only one, that's Ja'Marr Chase, to crack the top 10? And as for tight ends, last season and the season prior were both rookies who were the highest scorers. Brock Bowers, he was number 33, and Sam Laporta the year prior was 43. But of course, then there's Travis Kelce's 2022 campaign, which did net him the 12th most fantasy points that season. Now, I can look at these notes and I can say, this is a justification to draft my guy maybe first overall or super early if it's tight end compared to some of my peers or other drafters because of scarcity, of course. Or you can see this, that the whole needs to be more or greater than the sum of the parts. So it really is a strategy question that you need to answer. And a lot of that is dictated by which position you are drafting. Either way, getting your pass catchers right is the key to delivering fantasy results. Happy season 2 of Numbers Game. I'm Cynthia Frelund, and I am so glad that we are back, baby. This is part 2 of our special 2-part fantasy football primer. If you missed part 1, it's in the feed. And also coming up very soon is our win total episode. That will be early next week, which means we have 3 total special episodes before getting back to our normal weekly mission statement, which is covering every game and every team through the lens of strategic and meaningful numbers. There is more to this season. First, this show will also be available in audio formats everywhere you get your pods this season. So you can listen to me at double time. You think I talk fast now? Try that on 2x. It's amazing. Second, all of my preseason fantasy football rankings by position and overall rankings are available on the Numbers Game site. It's really easy to find. It's numbersga.me. There we go. Feel free to use that as your cheat sheet during your drafts. And during the season, I'm going to update the site at least weekly with player projections, some daily fantasy picks, and of course, those will be ranked by cap price because that's kind of my favorite thing to do. And I'm also going to give you some extra stats to know and some other little treats on the website as well. So let's hope it goes well. Again, it's numbersga.me. And last, but absolutely certainly not least, in this channel right here, you will also find a brand new additional show, and I'm so excited for you to listen to it. It launches next week along with our regular Numbers Game show. You're going to love my co-host. He's a winner, as in he's got 2 Super Bowl rings, and he knows how to talk ball. You're going to get smarter listening to him, and hopefully I'll just ask really good questions so we can explain like the difference between some of the things we talk about here with the numbers and what it feels like as a player. But let's get to the business of winning your fantasy league. Last year, Ja'Marr Chase was your wide receiver 1. We already know this. But did you know that he outscored the wide receiver 6, who happened to be Drake London, by nearly 100 fantasy points? So between 1 and 6, the drop-off was 100 points. Now, that's especially wild considering wide receiver 7, who was Mike Evans, only outscored wide receiver 35, which was Alec Pierce, by about 43 total points. So big old hockey stick and then a bunch of flattening right there. What is my point? Trade-offs, baby. You have to consider the trade-offs. Now, let's start with this elite top tranche. Ja'Marr Chase, he leads the way again. Do I think that he has 17 touchdowns to lead the league in receiving touchdowns again? Likely not quite as many, but he does forecast to again be the Triple Crown winner: receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. However, 7 of his touchdowns, so 7 of 17, came in the fourth quarter and netted at least 30 yards. That is the most in the Super Bowl era. Not saying that he can't do it again, just saying that maybe we go down to like 15 touchdowns. It's not that huge drop off, but it's kind of a cool stat to know. Next up is CeeDee Lamb. Now, Lamb was my wide receiver 3 until the trade of Micah Parsons to the Packers, and then he shot up to wide receiver 2. Why? Because now I have more questions about the Cowboys defense. This is kind of similar to the strategy about Ja'Marr Chase. A defense that's very porous will require more of their offense. I think that those two have that in common, and therefore it drives up both of their values. CeeDee also has been incredibly consistent year over year. Third, it's Justin Jefferson. Fourth, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And fifth, Brian Thomas Jr. So those are my elite tier, the guys who I think are going to get you where you need to go to absolutely be worth that first round pick. A nugget to know and tell your friends here is that the top 5 receivers in terms of targets when aligned in the slot in 2024 were, coming in 5th, CeeDee Lamb at 28.8%. 4th, Josh Downs at 29.4%. 3rd, Cooper Kupp, 32.3%. 2nd, Juwan Jennings at 33.1%. And topping the list, Drake London, who was targeted on a whopping 34.9% of routes run in the slot. That's a lot. Now, picks 6 through 10 include London, who's actually 7th, right after Nico Collins, who ends up being 6th for me. Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, and Mike Evans round out 8 through 9. So just to be clear, it goes Nico, then it goes Drake London, then it goes Puka, Malik, and then Mike Evans. Puka was in my top 5 before Matthew Stafford had that preseason back injury that seems to be lingering in the season. It's a little bit unclear. Sean McVay says that Stafford is good to go, but that does add volatility for Nacua, which means he slipped to 8. I gave my top 70 receivers in the cheat sheet. So instead of just listing them, I'm going to highlight 4 more guys that I tend to prefer, each coming from the grouping of 10 that they fall into. From picks 11 to 20, take note of Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver 16. He had an over 46% end zone target rate last season as a rookie. That was the 2nd highest in the whole NFL, and at least 6 targets in 13 of his 17 games. Now, with a fully healthy Kyler Murray for the entire season and an offseason to grow together and some new scheming, I think this goes nothing but up. I'm also not the only person that is forecasting a Marvin Harrison Jr. like big uptick, 2nd season, blah, 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 whatever we're going to be, but I think he is well worth it. In the 21 to 30 range, let's talk about Ricky Pearsall at 26. With a bunch of injuries to the Niners pass catchers in the preseason, so Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, and there's some other, it's all very a little murky there. It's possible he could pick up right where he left off last season, as in between weeks 14 through 18, Pearsall led the team in red zone targets. And of course, Debo is gone. He's out there in Washington. So all of his share is up for grabs. But just be a little judicious here and be careful not to overdraft him, as he could be in a situation where once the team gets healthier, he could split some of the work, as in during your fantasy playoffs, it could be a tough call. Do I play him? Is he getting enough volume, etc.? I really like him, and I think September will be a ton of fun, but just remember to do some long-term planning as well. In the 31 to 40 range, that is where I currently have Travis Hunter. He is my wide receiver number 31. If you could see a range of all of his potential outcomes, usually the guy's like, it's like about this big, maybe my hand, not very big. The potential outcomes are here. Elite guys up here, not so good guys down here. Well, his range is like this big. And it's because of what we think, right? Why? Actually, it's maybe the biggest spread I've ever modeled out, if I'm honest. And it's why we don't know the split he's going to play on offense and defense. We don't know if it's going to grow over the season. There's a lot of volatility here. I have absolutely no question about his talent. Let me be clear. But I do have a question about, is he going to be playing defense? That doesn't really help me for the way my fantasy points are scored. So I should point out that 3 of Jacksonville's top 4 target leaders over the past 2 seasons are no longer on the team. And new head coach Liam Cohen, his resume from last year as the OC of the Bucs shows that his wide receivers combined for the 3rd most fantasy points per game. I just think the expectations for the Heisman Trophy winner, who had 96 receptions with 15 touchdowns last year at Colorado, need to reflect that it's most likely that he'll be used strategically, and probably Liam Cohen doesn't have our fantasy teams in mind. He's going to be an awesome player, but just don't overdraft him. Be mindful. I think 31 is perfect for right now. In the 41 to 50 range, I want to point out that Xavier Legette, he's my wide receiver 50, will likely outperform any ADP that you see from him now that Adam Thielen is gone. So your average draft position averages all the drafts that have been done. So you're seeing him in where he was drafted when Thielen was still there. So it's probably lower, aka you'll probably get a better return for him. Now, rookie Teteroa McMillan is there, but both receivers get the volume upgrade now. And draft ranker things that sit on your site, they don't go back and look at the past 3 drafts. They look at the whole drafts that have been going on. So you can go and get him and snake him from your your draft partners late and probably get enough upside from him to really be a good help to your team. Let's do 3 more wide receiver nuggets to know. Number 1, let's talk about Jerry Jeudy, my wide receiver number 25, who had career highs with 90 receptions and 1,229 receiving yards last season. In weeks 11 through 18, he actually led the NFL with 811 receiving yards, which was more than he had in 16 games that he played in 2023. I've noticed that the Browns offense tends to be being faded in drafts where people have screenshotted it for me. So I actually think you can get Jeudy for like a great bargain and you're going to love the upside. Number 2, let's talk about Tyreek Hill. Last season, he actually tied for the second most receptions. He had 23 of them and gained the 4th most yards, 202, after being in motion at the snap last season. He also has 797 such yards since becoming a Dolphin in 2022, which is the most in the NFL during that span. Shocker, right? I know. Why am I bringing this up? Well, he is my wide receiver number 23 because 1, he's still explosive. 2, he still changes defenses. And 3, this offense forecasts the usage, an uptick in the usage of motions just like that to help Tua continue to get the ball out quickly. Remember, he's had changes to his O-line so they could use it even more. Motion at the time of the snap, not just pre-snap motion. I'm talking about motion at the time of the snap. Last season, Tua's time to throw was 2.42 seconds. That's the fastest, always. Feels like we have a broken record about this. Quickest in the NFL, and they're going to keep it that way. So Tyreek Hill, wide receiver number 23. Number 3, I spent the preseason with the Broncos, and I feel like Troy Franklin, who's my wide receiver number 71, and therefore not on the rankings chart, but he's a good guy that you should talk about, is a guy to maybe circle for later and also think about for DFS. It's a little funny that Pat Bryant, the rookie who's his teammate, ended up being on the list as wide receiver number 52, but that has far more to do with the routes he runs along with the Michael Thomas comparison that Sean Payton made. If his coach likes him, he's going to play more. In other words, if your bench is deep, Franklin is a great flyer. Wide receivers are deep, dynamic, and full of upside. But tight ends, that's a completely different story. The drop-off is steep, the margins can be razor thin, and grabbing one of the elites could change your entire season. Let's talk about why the tight end position is my favorite draft day decision. My tight end 1 is Brock Bowers. However, I don't have him catching 112 passes again. Fun thing I do see happening, though, is at least 1 rushing touchdown, as in perhaps some form of like a tush push or a tight end situation. We've seen that happen before, but I think this is where you'll really see how dynamic Brock Bowers is. Just so you know, for DFS, I'm going to talk about Michael Mayer at other times because he's going to be a good value. I think that 12 personnel, so using multiple tight ends, is going to be a big deal in this offense, but I still think Brock Bowers is the number 1 guy. My tight end number 2 is Trey McBride. In fact, Trey McBride is only 2 percentage points below Brock Bowers in terms of who could potentially be the number 1 tight end overall. I think in Arizona, there's a heavy share of both Marvin Harrison Jr. and, of course, Trey McBride. Tight end number 3, George Kittle. Am I a little bit chalky? I do want to remind everyone, though, that in standard formats, Kittle was your tight end 1 last season. And if you're looking at what the Niners did last year that was maybe surprising, they still had the number 4 passing offense. Number 4, Sam Laporta. I know Detroit has a new OC, but almost all the offensive skill pieces return, and Johnny Morton, he knows to use the best players. He's going to add some wrinkles and folds, which help Laporta have numbers closer to his 2023 output. Remember, that's the season where he led the tight ends. My tight end number 5 wears the number 1. That's Evan Engram, who led all tight ends in both receptions with 112 and yards with 957 from the slot over the last 2 seasons. Remember, that was in Jacksonville, and now he's in Denver. And under Sean Payton, Broncos tight ends have run 52.3% of their routes from the slot. That's the 5th highest rate in the NFL. And Payton called him his joker when he brought the free agent over. And we all know how Payton's jokers crush fantasy points. And tight end number 6, Travis Kelce. Don't look at last season and think that his numbers are declining. I am not worried about him. To me, this is a great season for this whole offense. I already told you in the first primer how much I think that Patrick Mahomes has a bounce back season, and you know who his favorite target is, right? Yeah, big old 87. Two that I want to highlight from the rest of my top 24 are Hunter Henry at 12 and Mason Taylor at 23. Drake May and the Patriots overall forecast to take a big step forward this season, and May specifically already had 17 plus fantasy points in 6 of his 12 starts last year. Now, part of why I think they get an upgrade is due to his O-line being improved and his pass catchers being improved. But I also think the guy who had the most receiving yards and receptions that is still on the team, that would be Hunter Henry, who had 97 receptions and 674 yards last season. He also gets an upgrade. Just so you know, he had a 30% red zone target share last season. And also, just so you know, when his offensive coordinator was Josh McDaniels in 2021, he had his career high in receiving touchdowns, red zone, and end zone targets. So it seems like all signs are pointing up for Hunter Henry. And Mason Taylor, the rookie Jet tight end. He's my tight end 23, but he has a ton of upside, especially later in the season. Remember, New York's OC, that's Tanner Engstrand, he comes from the Lions. And you know where tight ends are prioritized? The Lions. So it's very likely that Mason Taylor, coming out of LSU with a resume of catching the balls, could be prioritized in this offense, especially once things kind of get rolling. All right, so we started with the running backs and the quarterbacks in the last primer. In this primer, we added the wide receivers and the tight ends. If you go to Numbers Game, NUMBERSGA.me, you can go get all of my projections, which include defenses, kickers, and of course, a fully prioritized list where all of the positions are in one area. So you have an overall list as well. There's also something on there called a C-score. It sounds like I'm saying like a Cynthia score. It's a composite score, but we can be selfish and call it a Cynthia score, whatever. Composite score. That's how you can kind of see the difference between my model's preference for one player over a number. So the bigger number means there's a bigger difference between the players, right? So that kind of reflects what we talked about with that hockey stick, especially for positions like the wide receiver. So C-score, composite score, use that as you want. Now, there's one more special episode coming. This is our season-long win total and season-long player projection. It's maybe my favorite one of the whole season, so make sure to check that out early next week. Enjoy your last weekend without football. Can you believe it? It's going to be, there's college football, but without NFL football, at least. Have so much fun. I am so glad we are back. Thank you so much for hanging out with me as always. And remember, if you like, subscribe, pass the show along, sign up on your audio formats, do whatever, leave some reviews. If they're, hopefully they'll be good, some good reviews, and get excited for the regular show to come back as well as the new podcast. Thank you so much again. Happy drafting and happy football.